Welcome to PharmaSalon. This is your host, Vivian Juder-Frankel. We feature discussions on regulatory, policy, compliance, and business issues specifically for the compounding pharmacy industry. The podcast covers topics related to 503As, 503Bs, hospitals, and veterinary. I hope you'll tune into all of our discussions, as you never know when and where an idea will germinate that will take your business to the next level. Welcome to another episode in our series on partnering for growth. In this installment, I continue my conversation with Greg McKettrick from Stanley Pharmacy about looking outside your organization for growth opportunities. After a discussion about expanding your reach and your community, Greg and I got to talking about a company that has become particularly lucrative for Stanley Pharmacy. They started out as a vendor, and the relationship grew into a mutually beneficial partnership, going way beyond a typical buy-sell affiliation.
I'm Greg McKettrick. I am a registered pharmacist. I am a compounding pharmacist. More specifically, I specialize in men's health and sexual wellness. I've been working with Stanley Specialty Pharmacy in Charlotte for the last 5 years. I'm also Director of Marketing and New Business Development.
Greg, at our event in March, in your marketing seminar, you talked about your community of doctors and effectively building relationships with those practices was critical to being able to expand your business. I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about that for our audience here today.
Prior to COVID, I probably spent about a third of my time on the road, literally going into offices, doing in-services with their physicians. And just to give folks a kind of a tool on how to go about this, you typically will have to go in and make an introduction. I typically try to find out if there's any specific needs they have. I'll then set up where I can bring a lunch in and have their captive attention for a short time. At that point, I explain what we do. And most pharmacies that they deal with, even in compounding, are basically dispensing pharmacies. So when you go through the process of explaining how you can turn over your patient. We are going to train them on how to do the process. We will help titrate their doses. We'll give formula suggestions. We will take them by the hand. And through this operation, what we do is we send soap notes back to the doctors. So they're informed throughout the whole process. What does that do for an office? Well, every one of these patients, think in terms of a patient who's going through a new therapy and they're adjusting doses and formulas and adding medications on. How many phone calls into an office is that? How much time is there before those calls are returned to the patient? When we handle those calls, when we streamline that process, most of these offices haven't had someone that kind of took care of that side of the operation for them. And when you are able to show what you're capable of doing and doing well, it doesn't take very long. And again, this is really how we established in much broader areas. We were fairly localized just in the Charlotte market. Now we are across all of North and South Carolina, and we've got a footprint in Texas, and that's going to grow. So it is really going in. Sometimes it's a cold call, walking in the door, making that initial introduction, establishing a time where you can really sit down and go over the details. And then, hey, it's on your shoulders. You better have the program and the know-how to put that prescriber, to put that office manager, to put the staff in a comfort zone where they look to you and say, yeah, this is going to work.
It sounds to me that you do a really good job of getting out into the community, whether it's going to the doctor's offices or online groups, as we discussed in our last session, and then, of course, also into conferences where you met Berkeley Life.
I was thinking about this morning. One of the factors that came into play with this, the seminar that I went to was on metabolic function and peptides. And the main reason I went was because we actually do some peptide compounding. So, while I was there, and it's something I kind of had an inkling about, but one of the top peptide doctors in the country, I kind of cornered him. And I asked him a very pointed question. I said, so we're getting a lot of flack from the FDA. Now, we're small. We're not a great big compounder, but I said, we're getting a lot of flack from the FDA about different peptides and different combinations. And he said, yep. And I said, so, what's the future? And remember, this is last December. So we're talking about something that was about 15 months ago or 14 months ago. He told me at that time, he said he would imagine that within 2 years, the FDA was going to basically clamp down peptide compounding altogether, which they have. There's very few guys that are still doing it because basically the FDA has sent the cease and desist. So this was the main reason I went to that conference, was because I wanted to get more details and look into more of these active compounds that we could be making. So when you start talking about how can you improve your bottom line and how can you expand your business when, the FDA is clamping down on BHRT and, things like HCG, they've reclassified that as a biologic with the peptides. It was extremely fortuitous that we ran into this when we actually were able to incorporate the nitric oxide. It blew up and it worked so well with so many other things. So, it was disappointing to go to a seminar, and the main thing I was there for, I was basically told, probably don't worry about this too much. What happened as I'm kind of walking along and trying to get my fill of all the peptide information I can and, make my head explode, the representative from Berkeley Life came up and said, what would you think about testing your nitric oxide level? I said, what the heck? They have a little test strip. I said, just put it on your tongue. It's going to take about 10 seconds. Not a problem. Tested the nitric oxide level, and I was okay. I wasn't great. And they said, okay. They gave me a couple of their capsules, the supplement. I said, okay, well, thanks very much. Went back about my business. And about probably 2.5, 3 hours later, came back for a lunch break, and the rep was there and, do you want to retest? I said, yeah, whatever. I know where I was already. So I did the test, and man, I was off the chart after taking 2 capsules. I said, wait a second, there's something going on with this. This is different.
So you recognize the importance of this product. And at this point, you go to them to establish your typical vendor-supplier relationship?
Yeah. So I initially contacted Berkeley Life. I said, I really want to bring this in. And my vision, my thought at first was, I'm going to take this product. I am going to go into every urology clinic. I'm going to have the urologist there. And, Berkeley Life came out and they have not only their supplement, but then they have the test strips as well. So I would take test strips in with me to these doctors' offices, and I say, you can test your guys. And I have a lot of offices that are doing it, but what we found happened much faster was when we started testing patients ourselves, because we actually were having the conversation with them. Hey, here you are, and you can almost draw this timeline for them in terms of the progression of erectile function and dysfunction. You can map out where they are on this curve and then explain to them, here are the metabolic changes that are going on for you. Here are the circulatory function changes that are going on for you. Here are the cardiac changes that are going on for you, and really kind of give them a bigger picture and then say, we can influence this. So again, a lot of this was pre-COVID. We were literally testing these patients as they came into the lobby or pulled up in their car. We started to get a little bit imaginative of how we were going to do this. We made up some nice little cards that had the testing instructions on them, and they had the sheet on the back with the color chart. So we would pass those out to patients.
So did you create those cards on your own? Did Berkeley have them and give them to you? How did you get these cards?
We did it with Berkeley. We told them what we wanted, and they did this. Exactly. To give you an idea of kind of how this has morphed at this point, we wanted to have more information, because when our lobby closed with COVID, that didn't mean that we didn't have patients that were still needing this and still going through this process. So we decided to put together a message that would be a take-home for the patients, or something we could send home with their product or mail to them, whatever the case might be. So again, working with John at Berkeley, kind of formatted a plan, and I'm just going to show you here. Sorry, I'm going to hold it up in front of my face, but this is what goes home or what we mail out to every patient. So what you have on here is sexual wellness information with nitric oxide for men and for women. See this nice little foil wrapped strip that's attached to the flyer? There's their test strip. At the bottom is their instructions, their color guide. So this is really a very simple way of conveying a very elaborate message. The number of times that we send this out and then have this follow-up phone call where they're like, hey, I got this test and I did it and I came back completely depleted. What's that mean? Well, boom. Then you have the introduction to a wonderful conversation where you can really counsel the patient on what's going on.
So I'm wondering if we could just back up a little bit and talk about the marketing material. Was that something that they had? Was that a collaboration? And now that they have it and they've done all this work with you, are they going to be using that to reach out to other pharmacies such as yourself? I'm just trying to get a handle on at what point does an organization move past the vendor relationship and become a partner?
Right. So Berkeley has study after study on different medical conditions and the research that goes behind it. What we did was we looked at their materials and our practice. We said, this is our niche right here. This is what we work with. We work with sexual wellness. We work with urology. We work with these guys that, a lot of ED. So we basically talked with them and said, we need to put together this very concise piece of information that is going to drive the message home. It's going to have everything on there that will help the patient. It's going to have the strip. It's going to have the testing information, the directions, the color code, plus the literature. So this was something where over weeks and months of us working with patients, I'd be on the phone to John saying, okay, we've got this going, but this would be better. And he'd come back and he'd say, okay, well, let's try this. And this is probably the fifth or sixth version of what we're doing. And basically it's just through trial and error. What worked? I think what John and what Berkeley has seen is the way we've incorporated it. It obviously has driven sales of their product. For us, it has done a tremendous service in terms of driving up how much of the supplement we sell, but it's also just exploded our capacity to fill prescriptions for things like Tadalafil and Sildenafil. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. 3 years ago, we might have been filling some prescriptions for just like the 20 milligram Sildenafil tablets. As of now, we sell on the average more than 150 prescriptions of Tadalafil 5 milligram alone every month. And a huge component of that has been that marriage of the supplement with the product because of just the sustainable benefit from it. I think when Berkeley sees what we're doing, they're like, you know what, if Greg and Stanley can do this, we can get this message out. We need to literally make a blueprint of what has happened here and carry it into pharmacies around the country because everybody could do this. And it's true.
What advice do you have for other people who may want to partner with the supplier because they see a potential growth opportunity?
Number one thing is there is a mentality shift that has to occur. I kind of explained a little bit about some of the challenges that we've had in terms of pharmacy and compounding pharmacy. It's no secret. Pharmacy, especially pharmacies, the insurance reimbursements have dried up. Compounding pharmacy has a lot of challenges. We've seen from where we were able to dispense office use product, that went away. The FDA coming after peptides, those are going away. The FDA they are on a crusade against BHRT. They want to take that off the table. So when you're sitting here and looking and all of these revenue streams that you've relied on are literally drying up. They're dying. They're falling off the tree. What are you going to do to sustain, and not just sustain, but to make your business grow? It is a mentality shift from being a dispenser to getting more into this consultative side, because that is where you have the greatest opportunity for growth. So just like what we do with these urology clinics, I mentioned when I first started with the marketing piece of this, we had a fairly even balance in terms of our business. And this is changing on literally a week-by-week basis. Urology is more than half of our business and growing rapidly. And urology isn't going away. This is not going to change. ED isn't going away. And the capacity to grow your business using this is something that's very sustainable. So by buying into a program where, number one, something like the Berkeley Life product, this is easy. It's a no-brainer. When you can literally take 15 seconds, do a test with a patient, they have a palpable reason. They can see the results in front of them. Like, oh my gosh. And then you explain, this is this marriage where this medicine's going to work better. It's going to improve your health. It's going to improve all these different aspects, but it's really going to help your ED. It is such an easy, it helps the patient, but again, this is a great revenue builder for pharmacies. And we incorporate the nitric oxide. I believe in the product so much. And it's called the Penile Rehabilitation Stanley Protocol for Prostate Cancer. It's published now, and it is incorporating that Berkeley Life product. That's how much I believe in it. When we're doing this, and now we're working with pharmacies in other parts of the country where they're starting to use our materials, they're starting to use our programs. If somebody comes to me and says, well, everything you're doing looks fine, but I'd kind of like to use this product, I'm going to look at that person and say, fine, if you want to try and reinvent the wheel on this, you have something right here that it works. It's got a great price point. Patients love it. They love the test strip, every piece of it. So again, I think that the advantages that we have, the ability to maintain business, to grow the business, and to really establish yourself, whatever the particular niches that you have. Mine, it's sexual wellness, male, female sexual wellness, and I work almost exclusively with that. Someone else, maybe it's BHRT, whatever the case might be. Find that niche and take yourself to a level where you are sought out because you have a program, you have a knowledge base, you have a capacity to really help patients and help the offices. That's how you're going to grow. That's how you're going to shelter yourself from all of this that's kind of being pulled away from us.
My conversation with Greg was so great about partnerships and about Berkeley Life that I thought I would talk to Berkeley Life as well and see what their perspective was and how it's benefited them and how they viewed their relationship with Greg.
My name is John Halbert, and I'm the CEO of Berkeley Life. Berkeley Life is a line of nitric oxide supplements and diagnostic test strips. Berkeley Life is a sub-brand of Life's Too Good, which is actually an Irish-owned company, but we have been here in the US for coming up on 14 years now. So we specialize in nutraceuticals, primarily in the health and wellness space. So we launched Berkeley Life in 2017. We have both a direct-to-consumer line, and then we have a B2B line that we work with healthcare practitioners of all types. So pharmacists, chiropractors, functional integrative practitioners, health coaches, etc. So we've been growing that brand since early 2017, and really in the last 2.5 years have dialed in on the healthcare practitioner space, given the range of applications for a nitric oxide product. We felt that practitioners were the people best suited to apply that product in as many ways as possible. So that really has been our focus as we continue to grow the brand.
We're talking today because of your relationship with Greg McKettrick from Stanley Pharmacy. I would love to know how you both first connected.
For sure. So how we met Greg initially was at a functional medicine conference in Asheville, North Carolina. So it's actually quite a small conference. And it was the Beth Shirley, who's a registered pharmacist, clinical nutritionist, and the head of our scientific advisory board. Beth had attended that conference and connected with Greg at the conference. And my understanding is kind of what had engaged Greg initially was the utility of the test strips. He had obviously knowledge of nitric oxide in advance of that, given his expertise in men's sexual health. But, between speaking with Beth and then obviously sampling the test strip, I think he found something unique in that he saw possibilities for in his practice and with his patients. So we have, as a company, between Berkeley Life and other brands, have a long history of working with pharmacists, but on a much larger scale with, say, the likes of Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid. And we've never really had the opportunity to engage with pharmacists on a one-to-one level. And it's the first time we've done that with any of our brands. And it's been a new experience that way. Not much more fruitful, but for Berkeley Life, it's been a much more fruitful process.
Greg has talked about how great it has been working with you and how the product has taken off like a rocket for them. You talked a little bit about how you've never really been able to engage pharmacists on a one-to-one basis. Can you talk a little bit more about that? What did you learn from him, and how does that influence your activities moving forward?
So, as I said, in our previous experience working with pharmacists, it would have been, say, a Walgreens, for example. And obviously, you're talking about 7,000 stores there, and the ability to engage with a pharmacist on a one-to-one basis becomes far more difficult. And I think there may be a hesitancy on the part of a Walgreens or a CVS to give brands access to their pharmacists because they have the traditional RX mentality and the front of store mentality. Someone like Greg, and I think a lot of company pharmacists that we've connected with, they see the utility obviously of the RX component, but how supplements and effective supplementation can really help improve the patient outcomes. So when we first connected with Greg, we treated him as any other account, but how we was deeper in that relationship as he started coming to us with ideas. So he was saying, could you do this with a marketing flyer, or have you thought of this used for the test strip? And it's rare across not just pharmacists, but any of our accounts that they are very proactive in coming to us. And as a smaller brand looking to understand our audience and our end user, by getting those insights, we've really latched onto it. And generally when Greg says jump, we say how high, and we're happy to help him out because we know he's such a great partner. And he's not only given us marketing ideas, giving us kind of product development ideas, but also he has introduced us to other avenues within the pharmacy space and beyond that we can really start to hone in on. And with nitric oxide, one of our key challenges is that it's kind of good for everything because it's a cardiovascular supplement. Really everything is somewhat reliant on it. So our approach previously was quite broad, and we were going kind of an inch deep on a lot of different topics. But, with Greg's insights, we've been able to go much deeper on certain areas where he has seen success. And we can hypothesize as a team internally about what may work for a practitioner and what may work for a product. But when we have someone like Greg and Doug and Stanley's Pharmacy coming back to us and saying this works, then that's a much more qualitative response that we need.
The premise of this series is how pharmacies can better work with vendors, not just as suppliers, but as partners. How would you advise people to better create those relationships? I know Greg was very proactive. Is that the key?
So I suppose I'll start with our own learnings as a brand, and that might be helpful as well, is that we hadn't at that point, or still not in a more formalized way, set up a continuous feedback loop. So it's about for us setting up a structure that if we have I'm sure we have other accounts that are open to giving feedback like Greg, but we'd never set up that feedback loop, somewhat automate the process where if they're prompted to give responses or prompted to give answers to questions that help us grow as a business and help us support them better. I think for someone like Greg and how he reached out to us as a pharmacist, I believe his mentality would probably be if you don't ask, you won't get it. And especially for us as a smaller company, we're definitely more flexible in what we can do. I don't necessarily see it as it being relevant for all companies, but it helps obviously that Greg moves through quite a lot of products. So I'm sure he will come on the radar of nearly every brand that he works with. I think he identified us when we first spoke as a smaller company that was willing to work with him, but it wouldn't have happened if he hadn't just reached out. So it definitely was a perfect match, but I don't think that if Greg was working with a much larger company, he would hesitate at all to still have the same conversations and still reach out. He also, the fact is that a lot of the work that we have continued to support him on, he likely would have done anyway. So we developed custom marketing pieces for him. We've hopefully facilitated him in getting exposure for his protocol and the work that he's doing. But without us supporting him, he would have kind of pushed himself out there anyway. It's just that he asked and we were more than happy to help. But I think the first step is just asking. And as I suppose I've always been told growing up, is the worst they can say is no. And I think for us, we said yes, and we continue to say yes really to most of the asks that he has. Experience of, say, the large chain pharmacies and even the more traditional independent pharmacies, because there is that split in the business between RX and front of store, that RX is seen as kind of a more profit-making part of the business, and supplements are considered separately. The experience and the learnings that we've taken from nitric oxide specifically is that seeing them as complementary, not as substitutes, means that fundamentally we're improving patient outcomes, but while also growing the business of that pharmacy.
that pretty much wraps up my questions. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate your participation. Thank you for listening. At PharmaSalon, we produce content and conferences for the compounding pharmacy industry that focuses on learning through conversation. It is our mantra that everyone's experience is worth hearing and can benefit from someone else in the industry, and we're the ones to facilitate those discussions. Our next event is the Compounding Pharmacy's Grand Salon. 4 days, 4 tracks: inspection preparation and response, quality validation and design, environmental monitoring, and leadership. Pre-recorded presentations will be released on September 20th, and live presentations will be October 5th through 8th. CE credits will be available for both pharmacists and technicians. For more information, go to www.pharmasalon.com/compounding.